83. Midas. Midas, son of the great goddess of Ida by a satyr whose name is not remembered, was a pleasure-loving king of Macedonian Bromium, where he ruled over the brigands, also called Moschians, and planted his celebrated rose gardens. In infancy, his procession of ants was observed carrying grains of wheat up the side of his cradle and placing them between his lips as he slept, a prodigy which the soothsayers read as an omen of the great wealth that would accrue to him, and when he grew older, Orpheus tutored him. B. One day, the debauched old satyr Silenus, Dionysius's former pedagogue, happened to straggle from the main body of the riotous Dionysian army as it marched out of Thrace into Boeotia, and was found sleeping off his drunken fit in the rose gardens. The gardeners bound him with garlands of flowers and led him before Midas, to whom he told wonderful tales of an immense continent lying beyond the ocean stream, altogether separate from the conjoined mass of Europe, Asia, or Africa, where splendid cities abound, peopled by gigantic, happy, and long-lived inhabitants, and enjoying a remarkable legal system. A great expedition, at least 10 million strong, once set out thence across the ocean in ships to visit the Hyperboreans, but on learning that theirs was the best land that the old world had to offer, retired in disgust. Among other wonders, Silenus mentioned a frightful whirlpool beyond which no traveler may pass. Two streams flow close by, and trees growing on the banks of the first bear fruit that causes those who eat it to weep and groan and pine away. But fruit growing by the other stream renews the youth even of the very aged. In fact, after passing backwards through middle age, young manhood, and adolescence, they become children again, then infants, and finally disappear. Midas, enchanted by Silenus's fictions, entertained him for 5 days and nights, and then ordered a guide to escort him to Dionysius's headquarters. C. Dionysus, who had been anxious on Silenus's account, sent to ask how Midas wished to be rewarded. He replied without hesitation, Pray grant that all I touch be turned into gold. However, not only stones, flowers, and the furnishings of his house turned to gold, but when he sat down to table, so did the food he ate and the water he drank. Midas soon begged to be released from his wish because he was fast dying of hunger and thirst, whereupon Dionysius, highly entertained, told him to visit the source of the river Pactolus near Mount Tmolus, and there wash himself. He obeyed and was at once freed from the golden touch, but the sands of the river Pactolus are bright with gold to this day. D. Midas, having thus entered Asia with his train of brigands, was adopted by the childless Phrygian king Gordius. While only a poor peasant, Gordius had been surprised one day to see a royal eagle perch on the pole of his ox cart. Since it seemed prepared to settle there all day, he drove the team towards Phrygian Telemisus, now a part of Galatia, where there was a reliable oracle. But at the gate of the city he met a young prophetess who, when she saw the eagle still perched on the pole, insisted on his offering immediate sacrifices to Zeus the king. Let me come with you, peasant, she said, to make sure that you choose the correct victims. By all means, replied Gordius. You appear to be wise and considerate young woman. Are you prepared to marry me? As soon as the sacrifices have been offered, she answered. Meanwhile, the king of Phrygia had died suddenly without issue, and an oracle announced, Phrygians, your new king is approaching with his bride, seated in an ox cart. When the ox cart entered the marketplace of Telemisus, the eagle at once attracted popular attention, and Gordius was unanimously acclaimed king. In gratitude, he dedicated the cart to Zeus, together with its yoke, which he had knotted to the pole in a peculiar manner. An oracle then declared that whoever discovered how to untie the knot would become the lord of all Asia. Yoke and pole were consequently laid up in the Acropolis of Gordium, a city which Gordius had founded, where the priests of Zeus guarded them jealously for centuries until Alexander the Macedonian petulantly cut the knot with his sword. F. After Gordias's death, Midas succeeded to the throne, promoted the worship of Dionysius, and founded the city of Ans- Ansria. The brigands who had come with him became known as Phrygians, and the king of Phrygia are alternately named Midas and Gordius to this day, so that the first Midas is now mistakenly described as a son of Gordias. G. Midas attended the famous musical contest between Apollo and Marsyas, umpired by the river god Tmolus. Tmolus awarded the prize to Apollo, who, when Midas dissented from the verdict, punished him with a pair of ass ears. For a long time, Midas managed to conceal these under a Phrygian cap, but his barber, made aware of the deformity, found it impossible to keep the shameful secret close, as Midas had enjoined him to do on pain of death. He therefore dug a hole in the river bank, and first making sure that nobody was about, whispered into it, "King Midas has ass ears," then filled up the hole and went away at peace with himself until a reed sprouted from the bank and whispered the secret to all who passed. When Midas learned that his disgrace had become public knowledge, he condemned the barber to death, drank bull's blood, and perished miserably. Footers 1. Midas has been plausibly identified with Mita, king of the Moschians, Calfmen, or Mushki, a people of Pontic origin who, in the middle of the second millennium BC, occupied the western part of Thrace, afterwards known as Macedonia. They crossed the Hellespont about the year 1200 BC, broke the power of the Hittites in Asia Minor, and captured Petra. I think I said that right, their capital. Moshians refer perhaps to a cult of the bull calf as the spirit of the sacred year. Midas's rose gardens and the account of his birth suggest the orgiastic cult of Aphrodite, to whom the rose was sacred. The story of the Golden Touch has been invented to account for the riches of the Mita dynasty and for the presence of gold in the Pactolus River, and it is often said that the ass's ears were suggested by Midas' representation as a satyr with hideously lengthened ears in Athenian comic drama. 2. But since asses were sacred to his benefactor Dionysius, who set a pair of them among the stars, Hyginus, Poetic Astronomy 2:23, it is likely that the original Midas gloried in his ass disguise. A pair of ass's ears at the tip of a reed scepter was the token of royalty carried by all Egyptian dynastic gods in memory of the time when ass-eared Set ruled their pantheon. Set had greatly declined in power until his temporary revival by the Hyksos? How do you say that word? Hyksos kings of the early second millennium BC. But because the Hittites formed part of the great horde of northern conquerors led by the Hyksos, that's right, Hyksos, ass-eared Midas may well have been claimed sovereignty over the Hittite Empire in Set's time. In pre-dynastic times, Set had ruled the second half of the year and annually murdered his brother Osiris, the spirit of the first half, whose emblem was a bull. They were, in fact, the familiar rival twins, perpetually contending for the favors of their sister, the moon goddess Isis. 3. It is likely that the icon from which the story of Midas's barber derived showed the death of the Ass King. His sunray hair, the seat of royal power, is shorn off like Samson's. His decapitated head is buried in a hole to guard the city of Ansria from invasion. The reed is an ambivalent symbol as the tree of the 12th month. It gives him an oracular warning of imminent death. It also enroils his successor. Because of the great magical potency of the bull's blood, only priestesses of the Earth Mother could drink it without harm. And being the blood of Osiris, it would be peculiarly poisonous to an ass king. 4. The secret of the Gordian knot seems to have been a religious one, probably an ineffable name of Dionysius, a knot cipher tied in the rawhide thong. Gordium was the key to Asia Minor, because its its citadel commanded the only practicable trade route from Troy to Antioch, and the local priestesses or priest will have communicated the secret to the king of Phrygia alone, as the high priest alone was entrusted with the ineffable name of Jehovah at Jerusalem. Alexander's brutal cutting of the knot when he marshaled his army at Gordium for the invasion of Greater Asia ended an ancient dispensation by placing the power of the sword above that of religious mystery. Gordius, from Gruzen to grunt or grumble, was perhaps so named from the muttering at his oracular shrine. 5. Why the story of the Atlantic continent should have been attributed to the drunken Silenus may be divined from 3 incidents reported by Plutarch. The first is the Solon traveled extensively in Asia Minor and Egypt. The second, that he believed the story of Atlantis and turned it into an epic poem. The third, that he quarreled with Thespis, the dramatist, who, in his plays about Dionysius, put ludicrous speeches, apparently full of topical allusions, into the mouths of satyrs. Solon asked, "Are you not alarmed, Thespis, to tell so many lies to so large an audience?" When Thespis answered, "What does it matter when the whole play is a joke?" Solon struck the ground violently with his staff and encourage such jokes in our theater, and they will soon creep into our contracts and treaties. Aelian, who quotes Theopompus as his authority, seems to have had access at second or third hand to a comedy by Thespis or his pupil Pratinus, ridiculing Solon for the utopian lies told in the epic poem and presenting him as Silenus, wandering footloose about Egypt and Asia Minor. Silenus and Solon are not dissimilar names, and as Silenus was tutor to Dionysius, so Solon was tutor to Pesistratus. Pestis. Wait. Pes is Pestrastus, who, perhaps on his advice, founded the Dionysian rites at Athens. 6. It is possible that Solon during his travels had picked up scraps of Atlantean lore which he incorporated in his epic and which lent themselves to theatrical parodies, such as the Gaelic legend of a land of youth beyond the ocean, where Naima of the golden hair took Ozen and whence he returned centuries later on a visit to Ireland. Osen, it will be recalled, was disgusted with the degeneracy of his own people compared with Naima's, and bitterly regretted having come back. The unnavigable whirlpool is the famous one assumed by ancient physicists where the ocean spills over the edge of the world into nothingness. Solon seems also to have heard geographers discussing the possible existence of an Atlantic continent. Aristophanes, Mela, Cicero, and Strabo speculated on it, and Seneca foretold its discovery in the second act of his Medea, a passage which is said to have made a deep impression on the young Columbus.